Did you know that grades can impact your students' eligibility for financial aid? Or maybe your family's learning the hard way and they might have just been told that they're losing their financial aid package because of their grades. If this is your family situation, then I want to share how your student can actually submit an appeal based on bad grades. Now, make sure that you hit subscribe because every single week I'm going to give a new strategy on how to secure a debt-free education or at least minimize how much student loan debt your family has to take out for a college degree. Now, there's many other strategies besides just what the school offers, so this could be a perfect way to complement if your student is losing their financial aid, but hopefully we can appeal to keep it. Hello, my name is Jocelyn Pearson, founder of the Scholarship System and Debt-Free Degree Lab, where we teach families how to pay for college with as little debt as possible. Now, one of the strategies is, of course, maximizing money from the university. So if your student did receive some sort of financial aid package from the university, you know that that is very valuable. It is one of the easiest ways to get money because typically a student just has to submit FAFSA in order to be eligible, and they receive the money as long as they meet the criteria. So we really do not want to lose it if we can avoid that. One bad test is not going to make your student lose their financial aid package. This typically is only in a serious situation if your student's GPA overall has dipped below a certain level. So typically they'd have to fail an entire class or more in order to be in this situation. So in order to be eligible for financial aid packages, students must meet what they call Satisfactory Academic Progress, or SAP. If your student is meeting those criteria, then all is well. Now, part of this criteria might be how many credit hours they have to take. Typically, they have to be considered a full-time student, so 12 academic credit hours or more, and they typically have to meet a certain minimum GPA requirement. Now, most schools, they vary, but most schools, that requirement will be a 2.0 or below, but it could be higher than that. So you want to make sure that you find out what your student's school's requirement for GPA is in order to keep that money. Now, comment below, what is your student's GPA requirement in order to keep their academic funding? Let me know in the comments below, because then we can all learn what the ranges are when it comes to keeping this money. Now, one thing I have to say is the more classes your student takes, the more buffer they have. One bad grade will have less and less of an impact because it's going to be the average of all of the classes they take. So this is where, as a freshman, if they fail a class, their GPA is going to take a major hit. However, as a senior, if they fail a class or if they don't get a high grade in a class, it will have much less of an impact because they'll have all the previous classes they took to buffer the impact on that GPA. Now, because a lot of this money is from the federal government, this is a federal requirement for universities to monitor a student's academic progress and their standing as part of receiving this funding. So that is why this is so important. Now, what do we do if your student loses their financial aid based on their academic standing? Well, first off, the idea here is to work to better their GPA and try to get maybe more classes so that it can be spread out a little bit more so that the impact is a little less. And also, of course, to show the school, hey, we're making an effort and we are trying to get those grades up. The other action that, of course, we want to focus on today is submitting an appeal, so an SAP or SAP appeal. And that way, your student might be able to hang on to that financial aid and ask for time in order to get those grades up. So let's talk about how to submit an appeal if your student lost their financial aid based on their grades. So first and foremost, the process will vary by school, but they will typically have requirements, documentation, again, that can vary, but ultimately your student will want to show any kind of reason that they had that affected their grades. So maybe this was death of a relative, or maybe they were ill and could not show up for classes, or they had to take some time off. Maybe they had an injury or illness. Other circumstances, maybe family issues, legal troubles, financial troubles. Maybe they've had to take on a full-time job in order to be able to stay in college. So there can be a ton of different reasons. that your student can submit an appeal. But we also, of course, don't just want to say, well, I was a freshman and I just didn't take it seriously. That's going to be pretty hard to sell. So we typically have to dig a little deeper to find what got in our way from becoming the student that this school expected me to be. Now, most schools will have a limit on how many appeals your student can submit for this. So we really want to try to keep it to this only time if we can. So again, getting that GPA back up is really, really important as well. Now, when submitting an appeal, you want to make sure that your student is including any kind of documentation required. So for example, maybe if it was a health reason, maybe they can acquire a letter from a doctor or some sort of documentation about hospital visits or doctor visits. If it is a death of a family member, maybe we have a death certificate. So any kind of proof to show the circumstances that we are writing about in this appeal is certainly something that you want to submit. We also recommend, of course, being sincere and honest, being professional. So taking the time to find out who this needs to be addressed to, not just writing to whom it may concern, making this a formal letter. So that way, when they're reading this, they can see, okay, this student is very professional. They presented it well. And that's just going to give your student a little bit of a leg up when they're appealing this financial aid loss. Then we want to describe what happened that prevented your student from meeting the SAP. So for example, maybe it was due to my mother's illness, I found myself spending way more time in the hospital with her, and therefore I was unable to spend time on my coursework. So we want to clearly explain it. But the other thing we want to do here, and this is a careful balance, is we don't want to just complain or just give excuses. We also want to describe how this has changed or how this will change in the future, because we can't continue as a student like this. So we have to show them, hey, I have a plan. I know that it's going to change. I promise it'll change. I just need you to extend my financial aid so that I can stay here and prove that to you. So the next step after explaining the situation that affected the grades is to describe what has or will change and what systems of support are in place to ensure success. So for example, it could be, now that my mother is no longer sick, I'm able to refocus on my schoolwork. I've contacted the tutoring lab and set up weekly appointments. Or maybe it's my mother is already better, and for the last 4 weeks, I've been meeting with the teacher's assistant, the TA. So showing that action that is taken is a huge help when it comes to asking them to extend that financial aid despite not meeting the SAP requirements, or to give that financial aid back if it's already lost. Now, I do want to say, even if your student does lose their FAFSA money, they might be eligible for some scholarships as well. We've found scholarships with requirements that are 2.0 or higher for GPAs. So that might be an opportunity for your students. And if you want to learn where to find those scholarships, you can register for a free training down in the description below, or go to thescholarshipsystem.com/free webinar, where I'll show you exactly how to build that scholarship list. Now, again, even if the appeal is maybe rejected this semester, maybe your student can try to get by, find ways to pay for this semester, and focus on improving that GPA and building up that plan, putting those systems in place in order to show the school, hey, look, I'm taking action. I promise I'm going to turn it around. And then maybe they can submit another appeal in the following semester. So if it's denied, don't feel like all is lost. There still might be some opportunities there if your student is willing to do the work. So that is how you can submit a SAP appeal if your student lost their funding, their financial aid, based on low grades or poor grades. And I hope that you found this helpful. If you want even more instructions, including a specific example of a financial aid appeal letter that is generalized that you can use as a base, then I'm going to link to our other financial aid appeal process video in the description, or you should see it in the black box around here, so you can go ahead and watch that. Now, don't forget to register also for that free training down in the description, and make sure that you click subscribe, because every single week I'm going to give you another strategy on how to work towards a debt-free degree. All right, I'll see you in the next video.